Hey guys, welcome to the Lunge and Live podcast. Today we have a timely episode for you all about the top 4 habits and behaviors that actually get results. I think with everyone focused on their goals, we quite often look past the behaviors that lead to the actions that lead to the outcomes, which are our goals. So we're going to focus on those in this episode. But before we get into it, as always, a big thank you to our show sponsors, thetrainingstimulus.com. Please check out the website if you are a coach or therapist interested in getting your clients better results through movement mechanics, and look at our movement mechanics mentorship. Wit-fitness.com. Please use our discount code LL15 to get 15% off your Wit kit. And Hydro, use our discount code LL20 to get 20% off your blood flow restriction apparel. Let's get into it.
Yeah, third take a charm. It's good. Right, we're in, mate. We're in. And for me, this episode, what was I reviewing the notes and stuff, like, it really got me thinking about over a lot of the years, how a lot of the goals that I've had have then always kind of ones that I've kind of like either lost track on or whatever, have always been because I've focused so much on just the outcome, as in like, and then I've got so distracted by other things, and then I forget what I'm doing because I'm just focusing on the big picture thing rather than focusing on what I can do daily to kind of achieve my goal. And then especially when you have quite a big goal in mind, like say for instance my current body composition goal is to shift around 15 kilos. Now, last time I did that, it took me about 6 months. And that was my bodybuilding show. And I pretty much lost 15 kilos then. So really, that was with quite a strict diet. It took me 6 months. So realistically, this time around, it's probably going to take me, say, 6 to 9 months potentially. Having a little bit more leniency and a little less strictness behind it. But that means if I focus on seeing at 9 months' time, I'm gonna easily get lost with my goal and just think, oh fuck it. And then in 3 months, oh shit, let me get back on it. And then another 3 months go by, fuck, let me get back on it. Then next thing you know, it's 9 months later, and I'm still at say 104 kilos because I've just kind of done bits and bobs, but not enough. And it's if I would have focused on what can I do each day that achieves that there, I can obviously then get to my goal a lot more effectively.
Exactly. I think basically the thing that gets results is the actions that you take over time rather than just wanting that result. And I think for me, what sparked this episode was talking to a client who had a few things going on, but one of the things we were addressing was his flat feet. He had very collapsed arches, even though I don't really like that term for most people to understand. It's very difficult to reform somebody's arch. It's like a long process because we use our feet all the time. So to override their natural tendency takes quite a lot of work, quite a lot of reps. And when I had a follow-up session with him, I was really impressed with the progress he had made. And it made me think about what separated him from people who make slower or no progress. And I think it sparked an interesting line of thinking for the separators between people who actually get results and people that don't. And the first thing to kick off these habits and behaviors is consistency. So this client would do his movement mechanic bits every single morning, first thing in the morning. Basically, he'd stick the kettle on and just get straight on with it. And this is a trend I've seen over the years for people who do well in the gym, is that people who train first thing in the morning are the most consistent because nothing else gets in the way. It's much less likely than somebody who trains, say, after work, where they're tired, things have popped up during the day, they might have an urgent errand that needs running, or it gets too late and then it starts bleeding into dinner time. Whereas the people who prioritize their training first thing in the morning are much more consistent. So the consistency then leads to much better results. And this is the essence of a priority. Like, you're putting something prior, you're putting it before. So if your training is before everything else in your day, then it's much more likely it gets done with your full focus and attention rather than squeezed in around the edges, which means the sessions usually get compromised.
Yeah, that's even as a personal trainer, like over the years, it's why I kind of stopped training people towards the evenings most of the time, because I had so many cancellations happening. It was just like I didn't want to be hanging around all day for then a 7 p.m. client because my 5 and 6 cancelled, and I don't like to cancel on people. And I have to. It's like then I have to stay around, so I'm wasting so much of my day because it's not even then down to them. It's like I know work gets in the way. So it's about wherever I had morning clients, very rarely do they cancel. Extremely consistent, and yeah, I think it's the same as like when you're trying to obviously get something going, like you're trying to build a habit as well, like having that thing first thing in the morning just to that you can consistently do. It helps so much to then make it a habitual thing. Just like for me, having a decaf first thing in the day, like that's now what I have. I don't have a normal coffee until later on in the day. So I'm consistently having that, which then sets me up for a better morning, which then sets me up for a better mindset going into the rest of my day.
That's it. James Clear talks about habit stacking, the Atomic Habits guy. If you haven't jumped on that bandwagon, but it is an excellent book, highly recommended, where basically you pair behaviors. So if you're going to do something every day, like this client is always going to boil the kettle first thing in the morning, he just reassociates that with the new habit that he's trying to drive. So he does his movement mechanics while the kettle is boiling. And equally, going to the gym is something you want to add into your schedule. You can pair that with your commute. You're going to commute to work anyway. So if you just make the new behavior part of that system, then it's much less likely. There's less thought required, less motivation required, because it just comes as a package deal. And I think that's a really useful thing to build in if you're looking to add a new habit to your schedule.
I guess obviously the opposite to that is inconsistency, and this is where we often see people kind of fall off the wagon essentially, like because they're chopping and changing constantly. Like they're either going to the gym some mornings, or they might want to lie on other mornings. So then let's do in the evening, and actually then I missed that session. So it's I really like the thing that you said before, and that thing of that how your body is a shitty indicator of the truth, and it's
feelings are a shitty
feelings.
indicator.
That's it. The feelings. I knew it wasn't right. I was like, nah, it doesn't sound right. But because then, especially then, as your day goes on, you're going to be easily deterred away from then going and put yourself under stress. So you've had a stressful day, and you then want to say, "Oh, I'm going to go to the gym and put more stress on my body." You're like, I think you should have a rest day today and stuff like that, rather than you wake up, you get yourself going, get yourself started, and whatever that is, like whether that's doing the movement mechanics first thing in the morning, obviously whatever you're choosing, starting the day off right really does kind of help with that consistency, which then big picture gets you to where you want to be.
Exactly. I think it's important to listen to the body, but within reason. I think if you're always doing what you feel like, then you're going to be stuck in homeostasis, because that's what your body likes to do. It's always trying to keep you the same. It likes to stay on an even keel. So if you're looking for positive adaptation, you need to seek out that discomfort regularly, which often means ignoring your feelings to some extent.
So I guess one of the next habits is really sustainability, because a lot of us at the start of any type of journey often have all the good intentions, and we obviously go kind of balls deep and have every single thing like, let's do this. Like say with a fat loss goal, let's have really low calories, let's go do all the cardio, let's do all the training consistently, maybe have a rest day, and then after 2 to 3 weeks you're like, yeah, fuck this, I can't keep up with this. And it's whereas if we kind of had, I think, with your new goal of kind of having the bare minimums of like, you've got your 12 movements that you're going to be doing, and just progressing with those, you could easily add on to that. But you've got a good place to start with. So it's something that's very sustainable, that you will be able to, say, improve upon over time. But then it also means you've got a much higher chance of turning up to the gym and actually doing those shots, because it doesn't feel daunting in any way.
Yeah, exactly that. I think how this manifests in most people's lives is if, like, when you're feeling motivated, you'll set these really lofty, ambitious goals that you aspire to. You think, oh, I'd love to be able to do that. And you'll plan for the best possible outcome. But as we know, life often gets in the way, things change, circumstances evolve, and you find yourself unable to stay consistent with the new schedule. So I think, how do we make this practical? We think about almost like a worst case scenario of like, at a bare minimum, if everything goes to shit, I know I can commit to doing this. And excuse me, this is one of the things I factor in for writing somebody's movement mechanics. Like, what is something that you can 100% commit to?
Yeah.
So I've got a bit of a frog in my throat. And for this guy, we we basically did a 1 to 3 rounds, really small volume program, and he could always do 1 round every single day, whatever happens, because it takes 5 minutes. And if he has more time, he can do more, but programming on the low end ensures you're winning. So you feel like you're complying with the program rather than constantly failing because you've aimed too high. If you say we're going to do an hour every single day, then it's not realistic, and you feel like you're missing the point, and you end up ditching it overall. So picking something realistic and sustainable always trumps that radical, extreme, complete overhaul. Like you said, people who do this 4-week radical diet transformation program where they eat nothing and train 3 times a day. You can't sustain that long enough to get the meaningful results. You might see a really short, sharp improvement in your outcomes, but your only direction of travel from there is backwards, because it is unsustainable. The body will at some point relent, and that's not the recipe for actually getting meaningful results, because it takes a bit longer than that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was talking to a client the other day, and obviously been a new year, and he said he's coming up to his 40th birthday, and listening to the podcast, and he said he was like, I want to get in like some really good shape, and so told me like the calories that he's kind of planning to start out of, and it wasn't too bad, but I was like, why not start a little bit higher? Like, if you're already there, where's the next step? Like, exactly. Where are you going down? Even if like you then say, okay, I'm going to just do more movement, but you're committing to say 4 training sessions a week, maybe a 5th. So if you can only commit to 4, to do anything more is quite unlikely anyway. So then it really has to be a nutritional change most of the time. And then you start to think, fuck, where am I going? And then it does start to become that thing of, and he's an extremely consistent individual. Like he's great at what he does, and like he's achieved all of his goals so far, but it becomes that thing of, okay, cool, I'm then basically eating air. I'm on like, say, like 1,200-1,300 calories as a male, trying to achieve this physique, and it's like, I'm not going to be able to then, even when coming back out of it into like a bit more of a gaining phase, like you're going to want to suddenly bump up those calories a lot more because you're in such a deficit, and then you're going to put on quite a fair bit of body fat anyway to kind of undo where you've kind of put yourself to. So having a more sustainable thing of going, okay, let's actually start a little bit higher. It might mean the fat loss is a little bit slower, but it means that you can be consistently turning up. You can do just enough to move the needle a little bit. So tomorrow you can do the same thing, and so on.
That's the thing. You've got nowhere to go. If you start extreme, you've got nowhere to go. And the risks are much higher. I think that's the other thing, is if you go extreme, you're risking injury, you're risking metabolic damage, which quite often happens with these physique competitors, where they go on these ridiculous, crazy diets because they're looking to get insanely lean in too short of a period of time, and they end up messing up their thyroid, and that ultimately means that long term their physique is much worse, or they've got to take some serious corrective action to deal with it. So it's often a case of 2 steps forwards and 4 steps back. That's the way I think about it, if you're going for those extreme impatient approaches.
Yeah, I guess what the next point is our patience, and that's, I think, as a culture where we have everything so instant now, patience is like something's quite finite, because it's like you just don't see it often. Like, you can get things on credit, you can get things delivered the same day, you can get Instagram gives you instant fixes. Like, we're now got everything at your fingertips. So like, to actually do, which is why I think when someone has a good physique or is pretty strong, I think you appreciate it, because you know they're things you have to work for, and they aren't just things that come like overnight. Even if you're on gear or whatever, like, you still have to work hard to achieve whatever you're achieving. So it's like, there is no shortcut to those sort of things. There might be slightly quicker routes, as I said, with that, like, assistance, but generally you're still working incredibly hard to achieve that. So that's why you don't have so many people walking around shredded or lean, because it's a commitment. It's a lifestyle that you have to kind of live and understand that you're in it for the long game. So you have patience, you have that ownership over what you're doing each day. You're not just letting the day take away and like do whatever it wants to you.
Exactly right. I think the key thing there is that if you want great results, significant results take a significant amount of time. There are no shortcuts to physiological adaptation. It does just have a time limit on it. So if you're trying to shortcut that, you're compromising somewhere, you're adding big risks. Yeah, if you're using assistance, then you're obviously risking your health. So having patience gives your body the opportunity to actually adapt in the ways that you're asking it to at a rate that it can comply with. So the more patient you can be, the less risk you take. And ultimately, conversely, it feels like it's not happening, but you're more likely to get to your result as long as you're consistent and patient. You'll get there eventually, provided you're moving forwards. Whereas the people who try to get the quick results get frustrated, push their body too hard, get set back by injury or whatever it might be. The impatience has a real cost to it.
Yeah, and I think like it's, for me, one of the most important parts is making sure you are still moving forward, because it's where we say about having patience is in, like, when you hear like trust the process and stuff like that, it's like I love that saying and I hate it at the same time, because you have to understand what process you're on, and it's a really arbitrary term to kind of just throw out there. However, if you understand that, cool, I'm expecting to see X over this period of time, and you're checking in with yourself consistently, so okay, am I still moving in that direction? Then sweet, I can keep just doing that, because I know if I keep doing what I'm doing, in 6 months' time, I'm going to be there. I just have to stick with this. If you don't check in with yourself until, say, 3 months later and you've barely made any progress, then, well, that's where you fucked up, because you left too long between check-ins. But patience does mean you have to wait time, but it doesn't mean reflection. Doesn't mean that you can't have reflection on where you're at.
Yeah, that's a really important clarification. I think, yeah, patience doesn't mean accepting zero progress.
Yeah.
It just means accepting potentially slower progress than is absolutely possible. Like if you're going as fast as you can all the time, then yeah, it's like running a car at high revs the whole time. The engine's going to wear out much sooner than if you pick a sustainable speed.
And then lastly, I guess, staying focused. That's like our last point, because it's so easy to get distracted by other people's goals at the moment. Social media, which isn't a bad thing. You're seeing all these like other people doing extreme things, and you're like, that looks really cool, and it's so impressive, and it is motivating at times. You think, fuck, I want to do that. But then that can take you off course of what you originally had in mind of what I want to achieve for this year. Like, for example, like I mentioned in the last episode, where I was seeing that a lot of the people around me doing high rocks and stuff, and I was like, that looks really cool, and I'd love to do that, because it looks fun to some degree. It's like it's not too much running, it's a load of lifting and stuff in between. It's fun. I'm like, and like the community side of things, same as CrossFit, it made me really want to do it. But then when I actually stood back a little bit and I realized, I was like, actually, do I really want to do it, or am I just jumping on the bandwagon and getting stuck in everyone else's goals of because it's close to what they want to do? And it made me forget. And it was only when I then had to really focus on my powerlifting competition in the final like 4 to 6 weeks, and I kind of got all the other distractions away from me, because I knew I had to just do one thing at hand. And it was then when I realized, I was like, I don't really want to do that. I just wanted to do what everyone else was doing. I wanted to be the sheep in that case. And it's so easy to have that, because then coming into the new year, if I still had that thought of doing a high rocks, I was like, I could do that. And then I could then spend another, say, 3 months doing something that I don't really want to do. So
exactly. Yeah, I think in terms of the traits or behaviors that actually get results, these all link together. There's a lot of overlap, and they go together very nicely in that if you stay focused, you're much more likely to be consistent. You're much more likely to pick something that's sustainable, and also be patient, because you have very clearly front of mind what you're doing, why you're doing it. And that makes a lot of decisions for you without having to overthink them. Whereas if you're not focused, you're not clear on what you're doing and why you're doing it, then you're much more susceptible to those distractions, because there's a lot of other cool things to do. There's a lot of fun that's going on. And like we said earlier, if you're always a slave to your feelings and you just do whatever you feel like in the moment, you're not going to stay on that long-term progressive path, which is actually getting the significant results that you might be after. And don't get me wrong, there are some people who don't care about it enough, so they're much more happy to be inconsistent, to train unsustainably for periods of
Program
time.
hop and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They can. That's all well and good, but what we're talking about here is actually getting results. And if you actually want to get results, staying focused correlates positively with getting results. The more focused you are, the better your results are. It's pretty much as simple as that. There are trade-offs around it, but being like that is one of the common traits amongst highly successful people in all fields, is that they don't get distracted by things that are not in their goals or their vision.
Hence why horses wear those blinders, don't it, when they're running, so they don't see everything. They literally just
Exactly.
they're just running, and that's it. They're not getting distracted by the other horses and stuff. And it's now we don't have any blinkers on or blinders, whatever. What are they called? They're blinders.
Blinders.
Yeah, I'm going to say blinders. So it's like we don't have those on now, especially with social medias, and we get to see more people than the people around us, and then we get inspired by so many other people, and it is hard, and especially if for me in particular, it's like when you hear them, like Jim Carrey and stuff like that, you talk about like they had like Jim Carrey had that check written out to himself in his wallet or something like that, or people stick like something in their mirror that every day they see their goal that they want to achieve. That's the daily reminder of your focus, what you're trying to work towards, because you do have these daily distractions and they are going to come up. It's just how much you take them in or then action these distractions compared to, okay, this is my why for today and this is what I'm doing and working towards. It's very easy to stick with that if you're very clear on it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that predicates all of this, is that clarity on what you're working towards.
And I guess what that does, that stops you spreading yourself too thin, because I guess all of this it gets very easily done, that then if you do start to incorporate other things, it's very easy to then try and do it all, because you think, all right, I can fit in a 2 a day there, I can try and do my zone 2 here, I can try and do my intervals there, I can try and do all this, and it's like, maybe just focus on a little bit less and be really good at that little bit less, and then try and incorporate a little bit more here and there over time, rather than going balls deep at the start.
Yeah, the more things you try to be good at, the less good you're going to be at each individual
CrossFit,
thing.
right?
Yeah, well, that's it. That's why CrossFitters are not as strong as powerlifters. They're not as good at weightlifting as weightlifters. They're not as good at gymnastics as gymnasts, because those people all specialize in their individual fields.
But they're fucking good at a lot of things.
Exactly. And but you even see people doing CrossFit spreading themselves too thin within CrossFit because they're trying to do every single workout that pops up, and they're jumping in on their friends' sessions, they're doing a team session, they're playing another sport on top of it. And at the end of the day, everyone does have a limit. So your body can only adapt and recover from so much. And if you're clear on the focus of the type of fitness you're trying to develop, you're much more likely to get results in that dimension if you focus on it, rather than trying to get as good as possible in all aspects of CrossFit as fast as possible. You will spread yourself too thin and end up spinning your wheels, compared to the person who's much more regimented, disciplined, and focused on what they're training at a given point in their season.
Yeah. So I guess, overall, the most important bit is to take time considering what your goal is and like what we're trying to work towards, so we can have that focus, which will then mean we can have the sustainability, we can have the patience for the goal, and most importantly, we can have that consistency. And overall, you need to really want it, because if you don't, and this is kind of where I've really struggled as well with some of my body composition goals over the years, because I just haven't really wanted it. I'm just like, I want to be lean, but I also can't be bothered to be in a deficit. So, and it's like, but I want to be strong, and I've kept with that. So it's like, it's clearly that's something I want, compared to something my body composition one is a bit like, And even now, even now, I'm still like, I'm not even sure I want it enough. But what I do want is to make a change, and I am on that higher end, which I'm not too happy with. So I do want to make that change. So I might as well do it properly rather than try and do it half-hearted, which is what this episode all been about, having that focus, which is why the only actual goal I've got this year is to weigh 95 kilos. That's my only actual goal. Beyond that, it's just kind of have fun with everything and do bits and bobs.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully the behaviors that leads to the daily actions will help you get to the goal. So what are your daily actions, mate, for moving towards 95 kilos? How do you set that up?
Yes and no, not fully, but my main things is I've been tracking my calories. Like that's kind of like the first step. Just to,
Massive one.
and as I tracked for the first 2 days and realized, okay, cool, I'm around where I want to be if I'm just eating more intuitively. So like if I'm not eating like a pig, like I'm eating around where I should be, which then meant I took away that stress. So I'm going to give myself basically the month of January not tracking too much, like maybe tracking 2 to 3 days a week, making sure I'm not skewing too far off to make sure I have a ballpark. So again, sustainability. Me tracking every day right now probably isn't necessary, because where I'm at, say, the higher end of, say, 110 kilos, I probably don't need to do too much to actually start getting that ball rolling. So when things start to stall, then I can add on the next layer, which is then a bit more consistent with the tracking, rather than having tracking from the start, maybe, and hitting bang on the calories. Yes, it might mean it takes me longer, but for me, I'm more likely to say get through January if I'm tracking, and then say, oh, fuck this. And by the time February comes, whereas if I say, right, January, I'm just going to see where I'm at every so often, check in, and then February, have a review, maybe add in tracking. And I'm still focusing on like food quality. Like that is a big part, especially like all the episodes we've been previously doing last year and stuff. Like that's kind of a big focus for me. But I am using, like, say, my fitness power to kind of give myself a bit of a clear direction. And that's the only thing I'm focusing on, because I know everything else, like my training and stuff like that, will be just enough to kind of tick that box. And then the only thing I focus on is the calories that I'm consuming.
Yeah. Realistic, mate. It's just not asking too much of yourself that you're going to feel like you're not doing what you set out. So
that's what I normally do in January. I'm very prone to one of these resolutions of, well, not a resolution, but like I love to do like challenges for myself and give myself the thing of doing all these things for 30 days and stuff like that. And I love it because it does really help me kind of bring a lot of clarity on things. But then by the time I get to February, I'm just a bit like, oh, fuck this. And then I'm straight back on the beers and stuff like that. Whereas like having this is giving me an opportunity to kind of, as I said, have that little bit of a slower start, but that should then hopefully mean it's a more consistent year rather than just blasts every couple of months.
Yeah, so that's it. I love it, mate. Realistic and patient. Just progress is progress, however fast it is. So as long as you're moving forwards.
That's it. I'll be making sure I'll review. So we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Most importantly, you got something out of it. And if you have got a goal and you're working towards it this year, maybe have a little look at those 4 points that we've spoken about. So can you be consistent with all the things you're doing? Are they sustainable? Can you be patient? Have you got some clear focus on what you're working on? If you have, then sweet. You're now your goals this year. If you think it's not really sustainable, can you see yourself doing what you're currently doing in 3 months' time, 6 months' time? Doesn't mean you have to stop, but it might mean actually it might not be the right thing to do right this moment. Hence the thing with me and the tracking. I know I will track my calories, but just not right this moment, because I'm going to try and do what I can before I have to add that next layer of complication. So we hope you got those points out, and I hope that it helps you. Thank you very much as always. We really do appreciate you tuning in every week. And if you did enjoy today's episode and you think it will help one of your friends or some of your family members, do send it across to them. Spread the love of Lunge and Lift. And we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Cheers, guys.